Assalamualaikum and hello to all our viewers. I'm so excited. I'm so happy. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to talk about your book.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
I'm going to say a few words about our organization and myself, and then about you. So, HEMA is an environmental organization that highlights the responsibility of Muslims to take care of the environment, animals, creation basically.
Mhm.
And we've done our work also. In April it's going to be 10 years.
Oh, mashallah.
um, and Alhamdulillah, and it's been such a journey. um, and yeah, we're really passionate about that. We're maybe a bit like hippie like when it comes to everything,
I
but we're
know
really
about that.
passionate. Yeah, but we're really passionate. And I want to set the stage a bit. Sarah, you have a blog that has also existed for 10 years now,
Yeah,
mashallah.
yeah. Alhamdulillah.
And you have been documenting your own journey basically on
Mhm.
that blog, how you try to find more natural cleaning agents. Now, I want to set the stage a bit for this conversation because people who have been
Okay.
following our conversations, our Sunday Insta lives, they know that the topics were quite different in the beginning. So the first topic was sustainability from a Quranic perspective, and the
Okay.
second talk was about animal ethics from an
Yeah.
Islamic perspective. And last week we spoke to the author of a book called Eco Jihad, and she highlighted Fatima Kobanda Yassin from Vienna. She highlighted the Muslim environmental movement throughout the world.
Mhm.
All of these concepts are beautiful, all of these frameworks are important, but at some point we have to translate that into our everyday lives. We have to start to take a step to incorporate those thoughts and philosophies and try to make a difference every single day.
Mhm.
And that's why we wanted to speak to you as well, because we think it's a good example of how to translate some of those concepts into everyday life.
Mhm.
We all know that there's a very famous hadith, it's in Sahih Muslim, um, where Muhammad salam says cleanliness is half of faith. And
Mhm.
Muslims, well, I mean, if we take this hadith to heart, we want to keep ourselves in our house clean and pure. And we also know that angels, for example, they don't like if something smells bad
Yeah.
and if something is not clean. So we have this incentive to be clean and neat. Um, and you are convinced that this does not mean that we have to pay a toxic price in order to achieve that. And
Yes.
I find that fascinating and very important too. Tell us, how did you begin your journey?
Okay, so I began my journey before I had my first child. I was in my early 20s, and it was just a personal thing for me that I started noticing changes in my body. I started breaking out more in my face. I started getting some eczema on my hands. And when I went and spoke to doctors about it, there was no clear path to like solving the problem. It was more management. And so I didn't want to go down the route of, lifelong medications and steroids and those types of things. So I just on my own started thinking, okay, what am I putting on my skin? What am I putting on my body? What am I um, absorbing into my bloodstream like every day? What happens if I change those things? And so that just started slow for me, just starting to be aware of what I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really much change at that point until a few years later. Then I got pregnant with my first child,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of throws you into this whole like you step outside of yourself and you start caring more about this
Right.
life that's growing inside of you, and everything you do is affecting it. And so that's what really accelerated my journey into being very conscious of like, what am I putting on my body? What am I putting in my body? What am I using around my environment? And how is that affecting myself, my unborn child, my family? And that's when I started like regularly documenting the little things that I was doing, the little small steps that I was taking on the blog, and that's when it started growing. And I love that you bring up the hadith about cleanliness because, you know, when I think of the work that I do, I think of it more in the context of our bodies being an amana and how we have to protect that amana and treat it in the best way and the manner possible. And then the earth as well, that we are stewards of the earth. But I never really connected it with the cleanliness hadith. And because when I think of the cleanliness hadith, I think about like keeping our bodies clean. But I never drew it out to like our environments and our homes. And I love that. Like, I love that you brought that up.
Well, I
Definitely
think
going to use that now.
you're welcome to do so. I think it's pretty obvious because we're told to there's there has to be a balance, right? I mean, we have to make wudu, but we shouldn't waste water. We have to be
Mm,
clean, but that doesn't mean that we have to like. Also, I feel this world, this modern world, is full of things that just seem a certain way, but they're not really what we
necessary.
think. Like maybe something looks really clean on the surface, but what
Mm,
we use to get the surface really clean is dirtying everything else from
everything.
the
Yeah.
air to the
The
waterways.
water.
So it's not like how clean is it actually, right? So and to also mention this, you wrote this book, Mabruk. You just recently
Like
published
that.
it.
Thank you.
I have to tell everyone who is viewing and listening now, it's a gem. She takes
Oh.
you by her hand. She doesn't judge you. She understands. She gets it. Okay. She gets that maybe you want to do a DIY, but if you don't have time to do that, that's fine too. And then she
Mhm.
gives you an extensive list. And I was really touched to see that you did not only give alternative cleaning agents in the context of US and Canada, but you
Mm.
included like so many
Yeah.
continents where possible. Um, to get into the topic a bit more, so you say that on page 15, you say that it's important, we all know it's important to have like a good diet and to take care of our bodies. But we rarely think about cleaning agents and we rarely think about what we use to keep our households clean, although it is like around us all the
All the
time and
time.
we use it
Yeah.
multiple times a day. Like if we were
Hmm.
to count it, we'd come to like some crazy number, right? Every
Yeah.
day we're using something to keep our hands clean, to keep whatever clean. Why do you think that there is this kind of gap in consciousness? Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I think that we have been so it's a gap in consciousness. I like how you put it like that because it's literally like we are unconscious of it. We don't even realize what we're doing. And I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, the advent of advertising and marketing and when that became really big, you know, back in the 50s and the 60s,
Mm,
where everyone had a TV in their home and it was like the box where you got all of your information from. And so now I'm looking at this box and it's telling me I need to get this product and I need to use it this way. And look at all of these other women who are also using it and their homes are spotless and their skin is flawless and like
and
all
their
of
hair
this,
is
and the
beautiful.
hair is really, you know. And
Yeah,
so we've detached ourselves from this idea of thinking critically about the products that we use. You know, when we think back to like old age wisdom, you know, from our ancestors and our great grandparents, you know,
right.
they were very intentional, you know, with the things that they used and the way that they used them. But now with, you know, modernization and industrialization and everything is so easy to make and produce and throw it out and get a new one. And so it's much bigger than, you know, um, what we're using. I like it's I step outside of that completely. It's a philosophical thing from like a society perspective. Like what are we doing as a society? What we've
Right.
lost touch with a lot of those old wisdoms, you know, and a lot of that wisdom had so much intention, it had so much consciousness, it had so much niyyah, really, like just
Right.
thinking about what you're doing and what you're using and how you're using it. And so that's what I try and do in the book is like, let's take a step back. Like, let's pull everything back for a minute and think about things more critically. Why are we using the things that we're using in our homes, and how are they actually affecting us internally? Because that's not something that's discussed in general.
And I think you mentioned a very important point, because if we go back to, like you said, the old ways, the people that told us these things were people who we trusted. They did not try to sell us anything.
Hmm.
So they
Yeah.
used something, they knew what it was, it worked, and they kind of told their family about it.
Yeah.
It was not a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
It was not something,
There's
they
no
didn't try to
ulterior
sell us. It
motives.
was not PR, right? So
Yeah.
that's very, very different from what's happening today. And
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think there's still a lot of intention. It's just a different kind of intention.
Yeah. Yeah,
I might
exactly.
put it that way. So um, I want to say that obviously you have studied extensively what the ingredients are of those cleaning agents. And I
Hmm.
want to bring the conversation a bit home, because you mentioned in your book as well that the US has very, very different rules when it comes to what is allowed to be put into those cleaning agents as opposed to the European Union.
Hmm.
And that is true. Obviously, I mean, we have numbers about this. I think you mentioned 1,300 ingredients are banned
And
in the EU,
yeah.
whereas in the US I think it's 11, right?
Yeah, and that's just cosmetic products.
Oh
That's
my
just
goodness,
one, yeah, that's just one group of products.
oh my goodness, that's just
Yeah.
just mind blowing. But I
Yeah.
want to say, because we're in Germany, and I want to
Hmm.
say, I just want to mention how the European Union handles this, and I want to mention some numbers.
Okay.
Um, so one thing that I researched in preparation for this conversation today was that if a if a company wants to protect their trade secrets, they
Hmm.
can actually apply to the regulatory bodies to be allowed to use a different chemical name than what
Mm.
maybe the thing is called, just
Okay.
to kind of obscure and to kind of protect their trade secrets. So even if you read the ingredient list, I think you would have to really have deep knowledge in order to understand what is in there, because it might be that there might be some things mentioned that, if you don't know what they actually mean, what they actually
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
That's a bit scary to
Yeah.
think about that. Um, that's the one thing. And the other thing is that just in Germany, we're talking about every year, yearly, 1.3 million tons of washing and cleaning agents are sold to private households. Just as private households. We're not
Wow.
talking about industrial,
Like industrial, yeah.
industrial contexts. And then we're talking 630,000 tons are washing agents, 220,000 are softeners, laundry softeners. That's so disgusting. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to say it. And then you have 80,000 tons of cleaning agents like dishwashing soap. And
Mm.
what does that mean? That means that 630,000 tons of chemicals from those washing and cleaning agents end up in the sewage.
In the water systems, yeah.
And then we're talking fragrances, we're talking silicones, we're talking
Hmm.
enzymes, we're talking phosphonates, yeah, we're talking
Yep.
all kinds of stuff that really should not end up in our waterways, really should not end up anywhere.
Anywhere, yeah.
Um, Microplastics, all those things. So if somebody wants to do one step closer to some more natural cleaning agents, what would you advise? Where can we start?
The easiest thing that I tell everyone about is switching out your washing agents. And so the easiest ones would be your hand soap, because that's used all the time and it gets washed
Right.
down the water, the drain, sorry. And then your like the cleaner that you use the most often. So like we call it the all-purpose cleaner,
Right.
because that's what you're pulling out all the time. That's what you're getting exposed to all the time. And so you want to make sure the things that are being used um, most
More
commonly
frequently.
throughout the home, more frequently, sorry, are the ones that you're focusing on. And so for me, like the natural detergent, and the natural soap that I like to recommend is Castile soap. And there's many brands. And that one's really easy to work with because you just dilute it in different ratios. And so I use that for hand soap, I use that for the all-purpose cleaner, and I use it for a few other things around the house. But I would recommend getting yourself a little bottle of Castile soap, and trying out some of the recipes in the book for the hand soap and the all-purpose cleaner. And that will, at least, like I said, take care of the things that you're most frequently exposed to, and then also the things that are being, washed down into the water systems, that at least it's not going to hurt the sewage system, it's not going to hurt the wildlife, and it's not going to affect the ecosystems in such a grave manner as some of these more toxic chemicals do.
And what to say to someone who says, well, but I've been using those all my life. I don't have any issues. I mean, I don't get any breakouts. I don't get dry skin, and my stuff smells good, and it's like,
that's my favorite.
Why should I change anything? What do you say to someone? Because I mean, let's be honest, most people are not aware, and there's reasons for that, but what would you say to someone who tells
that's
you,
my favorite thing,
all my
because
life and I'm fine?
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to discuss, actually, because we are like that. I was like that. I grew up using the typical commercial detergents and the soaps and the million products under the sink, and yeah, I didn't, have any reactions or anything. But I think what we also need to pay attention to is twofold. First of all, we don't know what's going on inside of our bodies. Just because it's not presenting itself on the outside, it doesn't mean that something bigger isn't happening underneath. And just waiting for, it's like a ticking time bomb almost sometimes, that all of a sudden in my early 20s, I just started breaking out in eczema. That was never something that I had ever dealt with before. And then one day, boom, it just happened. So it's a matter of accumulation in the body, through being absorbed through your skin, and also through ingesting, like through your nose, like when you breathe it in,
because
and the
you mentioned
vapors
that in the book. I think you mentioned something called toxic buildup. If you can elaborate
Yeah.
on that a bit.
Yeah. So what happens is a lot of these chemicals are absorbed into your body, and naturally our body has a system for flushing out our toxins through the liver and the kidneys, and our whole entire system is built on protecting us from these foreign invaders. But what happens is they have a limit. Our toxic clearing system of our body has a limit of what it can handle. And when we bombard it over and over and over again with multiple products being used many times a day over the course of weeks, months, and years, we don't give it a chance to kind of like reset. And so what happens is the total body burden is what it's called. It reaches this elevated amount, this elevated state, and it cannot detoxify anymore. And once we reach that level, then our body starts to respond in ways that become more obvious to us, like breaking out in eczema, like developing autoimmune diseases, like developing allergies, all of these types of, chronic pain syndrome. All of these types of things that pop up out of nowhere and we've never really dealt with before, these are things that are building up in the background under the surface until your body just cannot handle it anymore. So that's one thing. One thing is what's happening under the surface that we don't know about. The other side is, what I like to tell people is like, your health is something that you can either pay for now or pay for later. So if you're using products and you don't notice a difference and everything's fine, and I've been using these for years, and my parents and all of this stuff, we don't know what's going to happen 50 years down the road. We don't know what health issues we are going to face in our 50s, 60s, 70s, and which ones of those were directly related to the choices that we made in our youth. And it's like the hadith also, Prophet said, take care of your 5 before 5, your youth before your old age. And so these types of things are ingrained in our deen. We need to focus on the things that we can take care of now to prevent what might happen in the future. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very difficult conversation, because if somebody's really convinced that they don't see any effect, so it doesn't exist, basically it's just,
yeah,
you're just scaring people. But I
yeah,
found that very interesting what you describe in the book, that there's a toxic buildup and that it starts from the day that you're born, and that you don't know what's going to happen,
yeah.
right? And the other thing is that there's so many things that we cannot control that are also polluting us, whether it's, cars and stuff like that. We cannot, mm, we cannot change certain factors in our lives.
Hmm.
Then why don't we at least take care of the things we can change,
I
right? To
love that. Yeah.
compensate, just even if it's just a little bit. And in this context, I also found very interesting that you write, that you are citing, or you're mentioning a study where they actually compared air quality inside and outside.
Hmm.
And that was also just crazy to
Mind
read. Maybe you
blowing,
can
right?
say a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. So in the US and also in Canada, I haven't looked into studies across the world, but those two countries specifically have run studies where they found that the levels of the volatile organic compounds, which is these small little vapors that are released from all kinds of products,
Mm.
the levels inside of our homes are 4 to 5 times higher than those outside of our homes. Um, and that is like the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States, actually cites indoor air pollution as one of the top environmental
Indoor
health
air
risks.
pollution. This
Indoor air
something
pollution. You
that
know, when
is
you think of pollution or air pollution, you think of like, I think of like car smog, like exhaust and,
yeah.
factories billowing up smoke into the air and trash in the waterways and in the oceans, oil spills. Like these are the type of major things that I think of when I think about
Yeah.
pollution. But the air inside of our homes can be a major source of pollution, and it's not just the products that we use, it's also our building materials, the paint that we use on our walls, like the some types of the way that they treat, like manufacturing treats wood, the
Yeah.
furniture that's in our homes.
Yeah. The
And so I don't
glazing,
want to
all of
scare
that.
people and make you think like, oh my gosh, my whole entire house is gonna kill me. Like it's going back to your previous point. There's things that we can control and there's things
Right.
that we cannot control. And
Exactly.
so our job as humans, as Muslims, is to focus on the things that we can control and leave the rest to Allah. And
Exactly.
so, tie your camel, as the hadith goes, tie your camel, and then you trust in Allah, and then you leave the rest. But you cannot just throw your hands up and say, well, what am I gonna do? I'm just gonna. There are things that are in our control, and we need to focus on those. But we also cannot get bogged down with those things that I can't control what my city is putting into the water that's coming through my faucet.
No.
I just can't. Maybe there's ways that they're treating the water that I'm not really happy with, or maybe there's the factories in the towns and how they're disposing of their waste. That's not my problem. I can try and be vocal about it and become an activist and try and change the system in that sense. But when we're talking about our homes, your home is your abode. Your home is your sacred space. What happens in your home is completely within your control. And that's why we start inside the home before we start thinking about, what's happening outside of these walls
Yeah. That's also how you build up strength from inside.
from inside.
You don't start somewhere, some on the periphery, basically. I mean, it's never gonna, right? You have to kind of start from within, and
Yeah.
then you're building on that. One thing I liked so many things about your book.
Thank
You
you.
made me notice that. But one thing I really liked was that you were really honest. And one example of that honesty was you made a list called The Inconvenient Truths About Non-Toxic Cleaning
Product.
Agents or something, cleaning products.
Yeah.
And I think we really have to talk about that, because that speaks so much about, it really tells something about our culture.
Mm.
One of those points, and I just want to quote you, just a second, 67. So you list those points, and then one of them is they're not as strong as conventional products. Safer chemicals by their nature are gentler, but I'd argue most of these products don't need to be as potent as we've been used to. Stronger is not always better. I think that's a really important point, because I am asking myself, when did this race begin to make things better, shinier, stronger, whatever, for nothing? Because it would have been fine the way before.
Yeah. I
But
think it goes back to that point that I brought up with the advent of marketing and television and even before television, but just the marketing in like the 50s. I just remember like these, you know, the old like newspaper articles and I'm sorry, the newspaper ads and magazine ads, you know, that were geared specifically towards the housewife, right? It
yeah,
was, you know, the housewife with the apron and she's like all made up with makeup
and
and
she's
she's
so
so
happy.
happy. She's so happy. She's
She's
like
so happy.
beyond ecstatic that her
Yeah.
kitchen is so sparkly.
Oh my goodness.
And
Yeah.
her husband's shirts are stainless and like it's just this whole, you know, culture. So I think it's really important to talk about that
Yeah.
because that has shaped our view, and it's
Yeah.
like I'm saying, it's become so subconscious that we don't even think about it. We don't realize why that is, but that I really think it goes back to those
Yeah.
habits.
Well, I mean, they have, like we said in the beginning, there is a niyyah. It's just a different niyyah. And the niyyah
Mm-hmm.
is to sell as much as possible and to make it look like there's a real need for
Need.
this.
Yeah.
And I think we have to start distancing ourselves to get out of this influence,
Yeah.
because otherwise I mean, they are experts in, human psychology and how the brain
Psychology. Yep.
works and what actually reaches people.
And what triggers
So
us. Yeah.
yeah. So, and I mean, who wants to have a dirty home, right? Nobody. So I mean, that's already like on their side,
Yeah.
basically. You just have to go from there. But
Yeah.
I think it's very important to really state clearly that it doesn't have to be that strong in order to be clean. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have to be that strong in order to be clean. And the strongest cleaning agents are often the most harmful ones. So if you could maybe mention one or two where you really really think they should be a no product at all, just because they're so toxic.
Well, one thing that I talk about, like a major ingredient that I talk about, and I want to bring people's attention to, is artificial fragrance. That doesn't necessarily go on your point of like the stronger, like in terms of cleaning power, but
Yeah.
they are so rampant in products and their harmful effects on our respiratory systems, on childhood asthma, and different allergies that come about because of fragrance chemicals. I mentioned in the book that there's about over 3,000 different fragrance compounds
And
that can be,
fragrance sounds harmless.
yeah, it
Like
sounds
if
nice.
I look at some of the other names, they already
They
sound
sound
scary,
scary. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But then you read fragrance, and I don't know, you think of flowers or something.
Yeah, yeah. You
You
think
don't
of the
think it's
beach
so
or
bad.
flowers or yeah, or
Yeah,
cinnamon apple or whatever.
yeah.
And they're labeled as fragrance on the label, but that's where, you know, that name, that label of fragrance can mean any one of those 3,000 chemical compounds that are
So
loaded
there's
with
no, it doesn't mean it's natural fragrance.
no, and
Wait,
even
even if it says
if
natural
it says
fragrance,
natural
can we
fragrance,
be,
the word
I'm just
natural is
making
not,
sure.
yeah, even the word natural is not,
It's not
anyone can use
protected.
that word. It's not protected, you know, so you can use the
Okay.
word natural on your product label and you can get away with that. It doesn't have to be like, what is natural? Like, how much of it has to be natural to use that
Okay.
term?
Yeah.
So fragrance, parfum is also, it's sometimes called that. So if you're looking for a product that has that if you want a product that has a smell, has a nice smell on it, look for um, plant-based ingredients like essential oils. It'll say like the name of the essential oil, or plant extract. It'll name them specifically. Look for specific names,
Yeah.
not just fragrance. Fragrance is one of the most harmful things that it's in everything. You know, like it's even in children's toys. Like they put fragrance
In
in like,
children's
yeah,
toys?
I don't know. I guess they're trying to like trigger
Why?
something like in the brain because the olfactory sense, our nose, when we like that's a very strong sense. It connects directly to our brain.
Right.
So a very specific part of our brain and triggers like memory and different types of feelings. So I don't know what like the, you know, I can't speak to their intentions, but I've seriously seen it in all kinds of products. So that's one thing. Fragrance is a huge thing. Look for fragrance-free products, and a lot
You
of
know what I'm
products.
just thinking about now that you're
Yeah,
saying all of this? Isn't it amazing that when people have to go on Hajj, when people make Hajj,
yeah.
they have to use
You
like,
have to get fragrance-free
yeah,
products.
and it can be really difficult to find.
Yes.
Um, like
Yeah.
my sisters have gone on Hajj 2 years ago. I think it's not 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. No.
Yeah.
And I mean, they had a really tough time finding
Hmm.
fragrance free and with no alcohol and all of that,
Yeah.
right? And that
Yes.
just shows you how ubiquitous this is, how
How,
it's
yes.
just everywhere. You
It's in
cannot
everything.
run
Yeah.
from it, basically. It's really
Yeah.
difficult.
It's
Yeah.
very difficult. I mean, I love that, like, you know, small businesses are coming out, you know, like there's a lot of like Islamic businesses now coming out with little Hajj packages that are specific. So they're serving the need. Even larger corporations are listening and slowly starting to roll out fragrance free. It's still
Slowly.
hard though. It's not you'll find it more often when you find like the natural products because they know like they're already serving a need and so they will provide fragrance free um, products. Another ingredient that I would say to stay away from is antibacterial products. um,
Antibacterial. Well,
Antibacterial,
that's a
like
buzzword right now.
that sounds right, especially right now, like in our current state of the world. um,
Really. You're saying we should go for not antibacterial in the pandemic. Just let's just repeat that because it sounds very
so antibacterial products have a place and a time, and a demographic. So, for example, if you have someone at home with an autoimmune disease, or someone who has, you know, a health issue that, you know, these types of products are a must, then I'm not talking to you. Um, and also, I will say that what happens in your home, like I said, that's your palace, that's your abode, and protect your home. So you don't need antibacterial products in your home.
Why are
You,
they so bad? Let me just ask, just so we can all learn.
okay,
Why are they so bad?
yeah. So what happens with, and this kind of goes back to the internal systems that protect our bodies, antibacterial products carry what they do is they kill all bacteria, any foreign invaders, anything that is going to attack the body. But if we have any bit of biological knowledge, we know that bacteria and microorganisms are a natural part of life and they're required and necessary for healthy life on earth. So we don't want to eradicate and wipe out all species of all bacteria, just the harmful ones we want to get rid of. Now, let me preface all of this with saying soap and water is recommended by the CDC, by the World Health Organization, by Health Canada, by all the global health organizations. Soap, water, and friction, you know, scrubbing, will deactivate viruses and bacteria and wash them down the drain. Why we need antibacterial products is when we are in a environment that is high risk, like a hospital, like a public bathroom, you know,
Yeah.
like these sort of places where the risk of infection is very high. Your home should not be a place of high infection risk. If it is, then we have bigger problems to handle. Like we need to figure out what that issue is. Now, why so when we use these products repeatedly and constantly and every day, what we're telling our body is we're telling our body that any sort of foreign invader that comes into our body, it's going to get wiped out. And that way, our immune system is never given the chance to try to fight it off on its own. and which is what it was designed to do. Our immune system is our lifeline, and its job is to find invaders, attack, get them out, and now it's stronger. And now the next time it gets attacked, it can handle it better and better and better. And when we continue to bombard our body with these products, then our immune system kind of gets lazy and it doesn't try to fight as hard. And then if it gets attacked by something really big, then it doesn't know what to do. It's
So
like
it
literally
becomes really vulnerable.
very vulnerable, helpless, and your response or your reaction to that big thing is way worse than if it had, I give the example in the book, like it's when we do this repeatedly, it's like our immune, it's like showing up to like a championship boxing match and you've never set foot in a gym. Like you have no idea what it's like to fight anything, and then they throw you into the ring and you're like, all right, go fight. And so this also goes back to our internal systems. Like, what are we doing? Because we can't see our immune system. We can't see what's happening on the inside. So that's a major thing. One other thing on that point is, and it's a buzzword right now. It's like antibiotic resistant bacteria. And what that means is the bacteria that we're trying to kill, they're becoming immune to these products, and they are what's the word? They're mutating into bigger and stronger and scarier bacteria, and so the products that we usually use to get rid of them are not working anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a huge problem, because how far can we go with that? How sustainable is that issue? So fragrance and antibacterial products is like my big thing.
Yeah. So I remember years and years ago, we had like a girls group in the mosque, and I don't know about you in Canada, but in Germany sometimes a mosque needs a good cleaning. and and I remember how we started cleaning the bathroom in the mosque.
Okay.
And one girl was like, this needs bleach.
Bleach.
We need bleach. All right. And she was gonna bring a whole bucket of bleach to apply to everything, basically. And it smelled so strong. I had to leave the bathroom because I
Yeah.
could not take it. So I think, and she was saying as well that she was using it frequently in her home. Her mom was using it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe she doesn't notice anymore how strong it is. I don't
Your
know, because
sensitivity is,
the
yeah.
sensitivity is not as high anymore, possibly. What do you say about bleach?
I hate bleach. I hate it so much. I hate it personal experience, because that was my mom. My mom used bleach.
Okay.
Bleach kills everything and cleans everything, and I had to like force her as an adult. Like when I grew up, and I was like, you have to stop. Like you just, it's too much. And then I remember one specific experience when I was pregnant with my first, and I was visiting her, and she gave me the bleach to clean something in the bathroom or something on the toilet. I don't remember. There was some reason that bleach was being used, and I got so sensitive, like my nose started burning, like the inside of my nose was
Oh
burning,
my
my eyes were watering, and I left the bathroom. There's no window in there too, so it's really
then you
hard
had a
to
good cry.
ventilate. And yeah, exactly. And I was like, I'm never using this crap again. Like just
Oh
it's
my
it's
God.
really, again, it has its use, but I think we use it way too much and we depend on it way too much. We think like if I just douse everything in bleach, everything will be fine. Um, but you just have to use bleach once to notice like the smell. Even people who use bleach a lot, they know it smells. Like it might not affect them as much, but they know it
Yeah.
smells. But I think with repeated use, our sensory organs, they just become desensitized and they don't notice how bad it can be until you stop using it for a long time, and then you're exposed to it again and you're like, oh my God, you
Yeah.
can't handle it.
And I think we really have to think of the whole cycle, because I mean, all of those things, they really are bad for water organisms and just the natural way water is, and it all ends up
Hmm.
in the waterways.
All
So,
ends up, yep.
and then it's going to come back to us in some way or another. I mean, um, even if we think very selfishly, we should not use these things. Um, but just generally, it's just not advisable. I want
Hmm.
to come to a different point because you mentioned your mom now, and I mentioned my friend and her mom, because you also make there's some very good points in your book. Let me just see. I also earmarked this because I found it really important. It's a very important part of this journey because with everything, anytime change happens, it's very important when somebody is very passionate about a certain thing. How are they going to manage if their family is completely not on board, right?
Yeah.
And this is really important because otherwise you just lose hope and you just stop at some point.
Hmm.
You realize that wow, I'm just gonna stop because I can't
I,
win.
yeah.
And you make this point in your book, and you say that you say you can win them all. It wasn't easy and it didn't happen overnight. um, Basically, you're making the point that also you say that the husbands are oftentimes the ones who are completely against the change because they think everything works so well. Why change
Yeah.
something that works? Um, but tell me a bit about this trying to convert family members to at least not work against you, even if they're not going to be completely on board.
Yeah, yeah. So that section came out of a lot of, yeah, emails with readers. And I would ask them, what is the one thing you're struggling with on your journey? And nine times out of 10, it was family. And it in the beginning, it didn't really resonate so much with me. It's, alhamdulillah, like I've been doing this for so long that like my husband just was always on board, and my mom took some time, but she was open-minded.
Okay.
Um, but the husband's part really stuck out to me because my mom's husband is like that, and a lot of husbands that I know, like people would literally tell me like, he'll sneak out and go buy the toxic stuff again, and like without me even knowing, and I'm like,
In
wow,
your
like this is
face. Yeah.
or I have friends whose husbands will do their own laundry because they don't want to use the hippie stuff,
What?
It's like they
Oh,
will literally,
that's a win. That's
so I'm like, you know what? He's doing his own laundry, just let it be. So
oh my
there's a
god.
lot of balance here as well.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of it has to do with, kind of taking it really slow. So what we as humans we like to do, and you mentioned earlier, is that we get really excited about something when we first learn about it, and we just want to shout it from the rooftops, and we just want to tell everybody, and like, what's wrong with you, and how do you not see this?
Yeah.
And but that, like, you can't do that with the people that you live with because like they will not shy away from telling you just go fly a kite. Like, dude, get out of my face, like with all of
Yeah.
that. And ask me how I know that. Um, but and
Oh,
so you have to take it really slow, right? And you have to kind of just like you have to meet people where they are. Okay. So if you just know that like this person, like your son or your brother, whatever it is just not interested, then you just don't bring it up like with that person. And if somebody's even just remotely, interested, maybe they're not interested in like the cleaning aspect, but maybe they pay attention to their health, maybe they work out a lot, or maybe they pay attention to the things that they eat. So you can
smart.
go, you go into it from that way.
Yeah.
Or if my brother, for example, is like really, he's like really, fight the power, you know what I mean? Like the man, like don't let the man get you down, like the government's doing this and doing that. So like for him, like I would be like, let's watch this documentary together. It'll
Yeah.
really like, open your eyes about a lot of things. Um, or articles, like when I need to like send stuff to my husband, or like when I need to tell something to my husband, like I'll just find a really good article and just like email it to him. So a lot of it is just kind of
Let someone
seeing
else speak,
how,
basically.
yeah, exactly. So a lot of times if it doesn't come from you, it'll hit different for a specific person in your family. Like that's one thing. It's just kind of meeting people where they are. And also I talk about, you know, making it a small thing. Like don't make it out like you're just gonna, you know, you're out to change everyone's life like overnight, because that's what we do. We're like, everything's changing from tomorrow, it's a new day, and none, and that's not sustainable. So I also talk about, you know, making a 4 week challenge. Like, hey guys, how about for the next 4 weeks we just change this one thing? You know, we're gonna change out the dish soap, or we're gonna change the hand soap, or whatever it is. Just one change, and it's a family challenge, and we'll see how we do after the month is over, and we'll discuss, and you know, so on and
Yeah.
so forth. Very small incremental changes. But at the end, like I say, like, you have to find balance. And sometimes, no matter what you do, people are not going to pick up on it, and they're going to come on their own time. And the very least that you can do is just live your truth, be on your own journey, and sort of lead by example in that sense. And just you have to,
It's
there's a
really
point.
difficult. And it's really difficult
It is.
regardless of the topic. Like we've had also people ask us, you know, when we give a lecture or something about, you know, minimalism or whatever
Hmm.
topic really. And then somebody comes up, but my husband or my whatever, you know, if I incorporate more vegetables into our diet, you know, the kids won't like it, whatever.
Hmm.
That's really sensitive.
Yeah.
The own family, the own circle is something really sensitive. Can I ask you, how long did it take you in your family just to get a point of reference?
Um, Oh, that's a really hard thing to judge. Because I'll tell you why it's hard to judge. Because for me personally, I went on this journey after I had already left the house. So I got married pretty young, and my journey started after I left the house. But in terms of like, you know, when I go visit like my parents or my husband's family and stuff like that, that took a good 3 4 years of like, you know, continue. But at the same time, I wasn't living with them, so
But
that
that's really
might that
ambitious. I mean, I was talking your whole household. I wasn't even talking the people that you don't live with anymore. That's very
yeah.
ambitious. Ambitious if you want to even you know, convert them. I'm talking like the people that live under the same roof as you, who
Yeah,
are
yeah.
really against what you're trying to do. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, I talk about a lot of the women who email me about this, but I also, you know, I don't talk about the success stories. Like
Yeah,
there are stories that come in, that are, you know, I worked for this long and he finally like got it. Or sometimes like the wife will like switch out a product without telling her husband and then check on him like a month later and he doesn't even notice, you know. So there's like things, you know, you might have to get creative.
yeah, but I think it's important to acknowledge that because with all the
Yeah,
idealism, all the motivation, and that's great, that's awesome, you know, people are really motivated. But at the
yeah,
same time, just to acknowledge that, yeah, it can happen, you know, and it
yeah.
probably will happen that somebody's not gonna like it, and that you have to kind of factor that in when you do this, because otherwise you're just gonna lose your energy at some
You're gonna
point.
lose your energy. You're gonna lose your motivation for yourself. I see Selwa here says it requires a lot of patience. Absolutely. Like so much patience and so much like biting your tongue too, of just kind of like, okay, just
And bringing
letting
your
it
own
go.
soap wherever you go, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was me. Like I would travel and bring my own like laundry soap to my mom's house because I didn't want to use like what was there. And this was obviously, even more so like when we had kids and I would be washing like the baby's clothes and stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of patience and a lot of just focusing on yourself, like of just getting your own why figured out, your own purpose and your own intention, because
Yeah,
then that emanates from you.
yeah,
Then when you're living your purpose, people notice.
yeah. That's something you also mention in the book. That's like a whole chapter, Find Your Why. And I thought that was really important as well, that you do this like in the beginning,
In the
because
beginning.
if people don't think about that, of course they're not gonna. maybe be able to go through with it.
Hmm.
Because there's going to be challenges. I don't know, price, for example, or
Yeah.
family members, or whatever. There's going to be challenges, and if we don't know why we're doing something, then it's not gonna last, or it's probably not gonna last.
Yeah, and you
Um,
don't have a sense of direction.
I want to. There are some questions. Momac asked, "Is a non-toxic life expensive?" And that's also Daya's question. She asked, "Price is often a point why people oppose natural alternatives because it's often said that those are more expensive or not easily available."
Mm.
Do you want to
Those
answer
are,
those?
yeah, so I touched on that a little bit in the inconvenient truths, and that, yeah, sometimes natural products are a little bit more expensive. Um, and my answer to that is, first of all, what you pay, you either pay now or you pay later, in terms of, the products that you use and how they affect your health. But another thing is that when you start switching to natural products, you'll notice that you don't use as many of them. And so again, back to the marketing, the advertisement, we have been convinced that we need like 20 products underneath our kitchen sink to clean our home when we need like three. Okay, you need something for your counters, something for your floors, and some dish soap. Like really, it'd be like when you go the non-toxic route, you also unknowingly go a more simplified route. There's a lot of simplification. There's a lot that you can do with common ingredients like baking soda and salt, and vinegar, things that you already have around that are pretty cheap anyways. And in terms of difficult to find, I will not disagree with that. And that's what I really wanted to try to solve in the book, is that they are out there. We just have to know what they are and where to look for them. And that's what's a major part of the research that went into the book, is figuring out what's available out there for all areas of the world
Yeah.
and where you can find them, whether it be in stores, which is becoming more common, or a lot of the online options.
Yeah. You give a lot of help in the book. I mean, your lists are really cool. I recognize some of the names you mentioned. Um, for some reason, the lists in Europe were shorter than the American list. But I think that's maybe because we generally have maybe less toxic cleaning agents here, or I don't know.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, how many alternatives do you need? You need one, basically. You
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
you don't need 100 alternatives, right? If you find one that's good, that works, that's all you need, right?
Yeah.
So I think Momaki also asked something about clothes, about toxic chemicals in
I think
clothes
they
that we
mentioned
buy.
organic. Yeah, I can't speak to that. I haven't looked into that much. It says, are non-organic clothes also harmful because they were treated with chemicals too? Um, that's a really interesting question, but I can't speak on that right now. I don't have enough
Yeah.
research on
So
that. Yeah, I'm
yeah, so I think the easy answer to this question is yes, of course, they're very harmful.
yeah,
That's why also people advise mothers to buy secondhand clothes for their babies because they've been washed a couple of times, and
yeah.
so those toxicants are usually not as prominent in those clothes than in the new clothes.
Yeah.
Secondhand is way better, anyways, but that's a different
I
topic
would
altogether.
say I would say the same applies to furniture as well, because of a lot
Yeah,
of the treatment that the wood and the materials that are treated, a lot of that off gases into the air. And so if you buy secondhand furniture, all of that off gassing has already happened. And so it's
yeah,
it's not it's not like the new, the new mattress smell and the new couch smell and the new car smell. All of that is chemicals.
yeah.
So I would say for also furniture and clothes, I buy all my kids' clothing secondhand.
I buy my own
Um,
clothes
I buy
secondhand as
my
well,
own
but
clothes. Yeah, I buy my own clothes. I
I
mean,
don't
this sweater
agree
I'm
with
wearing is
people.
secondhand.
Yeah,
Like
I
it's
mean, really,
it's
it
just
just doesn't make
for
sense.
other
But
reasons though.
yeah, is there anything else you want to advise us, especially now that Ramadan is coming up soon? I think that I don't know about you guys, and I don't know about you, Sarah, but for me, when Ramadan is around the corner, before Ramadan, I do deep cleaning.
Yes,
Just, for some people, it's spring cleaning. For me, it's pre-Ramadan cleaning
pre-Ramadan cleaning.
because
Yeah.
I don't know, it just feels good.
Because you don't want to
Um,
clean during Ramadan.
no, you don't want to
You
clean
just
during Ramadan. What advice do you have for someone who wants to do a Ramadan deep cleaning, and who doesn't want to end up with lots and lots of toxicants? What can they do? Something easy. I know you give like this easy step guide in your book, how to get started. I don't want to say everything because I want people to buy the book, but maybe
my
you can give
one
some tips.
I'll give one simple recipe, and it goes back to the Castile soap. Like, look up Castile soap, Castile. It's a natural vegetable oil based soap. Buy a bottle of that, and add a tablespoon of the soap to 2 cups of water. Put it in a spray bottle and clean your whole house with it. It'll clean your house. It'll smell good too, because they have fragranced ones with essential oils. That is, clean everything, like, literally. And that's my one easy recipe to clean your house for Ramadan.
So I just want to say before we conclude that your book really contains a lot of tips, a lot of hacks, how to clean this, that, or the other. You give loads of DIYs, how to make your own cleaning agents for anything that you might need around the house. Plus, you give all those lists with alternative products. So it's really, really comprehensive. It's really a good book. Um,
Alhamdulillah.
and yeah, I mean, thank you, and thank you for putting in the time and the effort and your heart really into this book. MashaAllah, I'm proud of you.
Alhamdulillah.
I don't know you so well, but I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
um,
that, really.
I really hope that this book is bought lots and lots all around the world. I think it's an important
Inshallah,
book, and I think especially Muslims should buy it because we should start being more mindful with what we buy, what we let into our house, and how we clean, how we
yeah,
fulfill this hadith, cleanliness is half of
I love
paying.
it. Love it.
And
Thank you so much.
I just want to quote, just because I just think it's so important, quote you on page 66. You write, you deserve a safe, healthy, natural home for your family. That's right, you deserve it. Your family deserves it. Your health deserves it. And our planet deserves it. Amen.
I mean,
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your
Alhamdulillah.
time.
Thank
And
you for having
inshallah,
me.
thank you so much. And inshallah, yeah, who knows? Maybe there's more books coming.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay,
Alright.
have a nice day. Inshallah.
Have a good night, inshallah.
You too. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.